The call came in just after midnight. As I was already awake, staring at the ceiling of my small cabin on the outskirts of Juneau, Alaska. The wind howled outside, rattling the frosted window panes, and the radio static hummed low in the background. When the dispatcher's voice crackled through, my body tensed instinctively. SAR team, we have a missing person report near Black Hollow Ridge. Male, 42 years old. Last known location, coordinates incoming. Be advised, severe weather incoming. Black Hollow Ridge. Just hearing the name sent a shiver down my spine. The area was notorious for its dense forests, treacherous terrain, and sudden rock slides. More than a few hikers had gone missing there over the years, and not all had been found. Those that were, well, let's just say some things weren't meant to be disturbed. I rolled out of bed, threw on my gear, and grabbed my radio. This is Jake Carter, responding. I'll meet the team at Base Camp Alpha in 20. As I hurried out into the freezing night, the wind howled like a living thing, whispering secrets through the pines. By the time I arrived at base camp, the rest of my team was already there, huddled around the map table inside our makeshift operations tent. The lead on our mission, Captain Reynolds, was a veteran SAR officer with more recoveries under his belt than I could count. He had that haunted look in his eyes, one you only got after years of searching for people who didn't want to be found. Standing next to him was my longtime friend and partner, Sam Torres, and our new recruit, a quiet but capable woman named Lena Brooks. Reynolds looked up as I entered. Jake, good, you're here. He tapped a spot on the map, right at the edge of Black Hollow Ridge. This is where he was last seen. He was part of a small hiking group, but he wandered off alone and didn't return. That was over 12 hours ago. 12 hours? Sam scoffed. And they're only calling us now? Reynolds sighed. Apparently, they assumed he'd turn up until they started hearing noises. Noises? Lena asked, frowning. Reynolds hesitated before speaking. They said it sounded like whispering, but not from any person. A heavy silence settled over the group. I glanced at Sam, who rolled his eyes, clearly unimpressed. We'd heard our share of weird stories in this job, but at the end of the day, most cases came down to poor planning and bad luck. All right, I said, grabbing my pack. Let's find this guy before he freezes to death. We set out just before dawn. The terrain was brutal, even in daylight. The trees loomed tall and skeletal, their branches twisting like gnarled fingers. Snow blanketed the ground, hiding treacherous roots and unseen drops. As we climbed higher, the air grew thinner, and the wind carried a strange, hollow sound, like something distant was calling out. We pressed forward, calling out the missing man's name. Michael! Michael Avery! If you can hear us, call out! No response. We found his footprints first. They were erratic, weaving in and out of the tree line, as if he had been running from something. Then we found something else. A set of claw marks, long, deep gouges, running along the bark of a nearby tree. Lena crouched down, running her gloved fingers over the frozen wood. These are fresh. I exchanged a glance with Reynolds. A bear? He shook his head. Too big. I didn't like that answer. We continued forward, following the footprints. They led us deeper into the forest, where the trees grew unnaturally close together, their limbs arching over us like a skeletal canopy. The deeper we went, the quieter it got. No birds, no wind, just silence. Then we found his backpack. It was half buried in the snow, torn open like something had ripped through it. His supplies were scattered, uneaten energy bars still in their wrappers, a flashlight with its batteries missing, a notebook. Wait, a notebook? I picked it up and flipped through the pages. Most of it was filled with mundane hiking notes, but the last few entries caught my eye. Something is wrong. I keep hearing whispers in the trees. At first I thought it was just the wind, but it's not. It's words. I can't understand them, but they're getting louder. I saw something between the trees. I don't know what it was. Too tall to be a man. Too thin. Guys. God. Its eyes. The rest of the page was smeared with something dark. My blood ran cold. Guys, I said, turning to the group. We need to move. Now. Sam frowned. What? Why? Before I could answer, the whispering started. It came from all around us, low and breathy, like a dozen voices speaking at once. Lena spun in a circle, her rifle raised. Where is that coming from? Reynolds gritted his teeth. Stay close. Keep moving. We pushed forward, but the footprints had disappeared. Just gone, like they'd never been there in the first place. And then we saw it. At the edge of the trees, standing deathly still, was a figure. It was tall, too tall, its limbs impossibly long and thin. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched tight over sharp bones. And its eyes were empty, a deep, bottomless black that seemed to swallow the light. And when it opened its mouth wide, too wide, the whispering stopped, replaced by a scream, an unearthly, bone-chilling wail that shook the trees and sent ice racing through my veins. Then it moved. Fast, too fast, and the world around us shattered into chaos. The scream shattered the silence. It wasn't human. It wasn't even animal. It was something else, something raw, unnatural, and wrong. It clawed into my brain like jagged glass, making my ears ring and my vision blur. "Move," Reynolds bellowed, yanking me back as the figure lunged. Lena fired first. The shot rang out, echoing through the frozen forest. I saw the bullet hit, but the thing didn't react. It didn't stumble, I didn't bleed, just jerked unnaturally, its limbs snapping into new angles before it rushed forward again. We ran. Branches whipped against my face, the cold air burning my lungs as we sprinted through the snow. Behind us, the whispering started again, low, insidious, wrapping around us like invisible fingers. Michael Avery had run too, and he hadn't made it. "Keep going," Reynolds shouted. "Don't stop." I didn't need to be told twice. The forest blurred around me, trees morphing into twisted shadows. My heart hammered against my ribs as we tore through the undergrowth, our boots crunching through ice and snow. But no matter how fast we ran, the whispering stayed close. Too close. We didn't stop until we hit a clearing, a break in the trees where the ground dipped into a narrow ravine. The wind howled through, cold and sharp as a knife. I collapsed onto my knees, gasping for breath. Sam was right beside me, face pale, sweat freezing to his skin. "What the hell was that?" Reynolds didn't answer. He was scanning the tree line, his rifle raised, jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Lena was the first to break the silence. "It should be dead," she muttered, voice shaking. "I shot it. I saw the bullet hit." I turned, glancing back at the trees. Nothing moved. No whispering, no sound. For now. Reynolds exhaled sharply. "We need to get back to base camp." Sam swore under his breath. "And tell them what? That we ran into what? A monster?" Nobody answered, because none of us had a better explanation. We started moving again, slower this time, more careful. The wind had picked up, howling through the ravine. Snow swirled in thick gusts, making it harder to see. Every crunch of snow beneath my boots made my stomach tighten. I kept thinking about the notebook. I saw something between the trees, too tall to be a man, too thin. Michael had seen it, and now he was gone. I swallowed hard, gripping my flashlight tighter. Then I noticed something up ahead. "Hold up," I whispered. Everyone froze. I stepped forward, shining my light ahead. The snow was disturbed, piled in strange, uneven mounds. Then I saw what was sticking out of one of them. A hand. Frozen, blue, fingers curled in a claw-like grip. Michael Avery. Sam cursed under his breath. Lena turned away, covering her mouth. I crouched down beside the body. His face was twisted in an expression of pure terror, lips cracked and frozen. His eyes were open, but something was wrong with them. They were black, like the things, like they had been hollowed out. I stumbled back, heart hammering. "What the hell is this?" Sam whispered. Nobody had an answer. Then somewhere in the distance, the whispering started again, and this time it was closer. The whispering slithered through the trees, wrapping around us like a cold, unseen presence. It wasn't coming from a single direction. It was everywhere. Lena gripped her rifle tighter, knuckles white. "We need to move." Nobody argued. Reynolds took point, leading us up the ravine, moving quickly but cautiously. I stayed near the back, casting nervous glances over my shoulder. Every shadow felt too deep. Every gust of wind carried something that wasn't quite the wind. Michael Avery's frozen, empty-eyed face burned in my mind. We had found him, but something told me he wasn't really gone. The storm was getting worse. Snow fell in thick, blinding sheets. The temperature dropped even further, the cold gnawing through my gear. We needed shelter, but stopping out in the open felt like an invitation for whatever was stalking us. Then, through the swirling white, I saw it. A cabin, old, half-collapsed, barely standing against the wind, but it was shelter. "There," I pointed ahead. Reynolds hesitated, then nodded. "Move." We pushed through the snow, the wind fighting us every step of the way. The door was barely hanging onto its hinges, but Sam shoved it open and we stumbled inside. The air was thick with dust and rot. The place had been abandoned for years. A broken table lay in the center, a rusted wood stove in the corner. Animal bones littered the floor, some old, some fresher. Lena shone her flashlight around. Who lived here? Reynolds shook his head. Doesn't matter, block the door. Sam and I pushed a heavy wooden beam against the entrance. It wouldn't stop whatever was out there, but it might slow it down. Then the whispering stopped. Dead silence. I turned to the others. Their faces were pale, eyes wide. Then, from somewhere inside the cabin, a slow, deliberate creak. We weren't alone. Lena raised her rifle. I reached for my flashlight, my fingers slick with sweat despite the cold. Reynolds motioned for us to move quietly. We fanned out, scanning the dark corners of the cabin. Another creak. Closer this time. Then I saw it. A figure crouched in the far corner, half hidden by shadows. At first, I thought it was just another pile of debris, but then it moved. Slowly. Unfolding. My breath hitched. It was tall. Too tall for the space, its limbs contorted at impossible angles. Its skin was sickly pale, stretched tight over sharp bones, and its eyes, hollow, black voids that swallowed the light. Lena gasped. The thing smiled. Then it spoke. Not in words, not in any language I could understand, but in that awful, slithering whispering. My head pounded, my vision blurred. It felt like something was inside my skull, crawling, digging. Then it lunged. Lena fired. The room exploded into chaos. The bullet hit, but like before, it didn't stop. The thing twisted, its limbs snapping into unnatural angles as it skittered toward us. Move, Reynolds roared. We scrambled back, knocking over furniture, slipping on the icy floor. The thing was fast, too fast. Its fingers, long and clawed, raked against the walls as it moved. Then it stopped, just inches from me. Its face, if you could call it that, was inches from mine. Its breath reeked of decay. Its mouth stretched into something that almost resembled a grin. And then it spoke. Not in whispers this time, but in Michael Avery's voice. Help me. My blood turned to ice. Jake, Sam's voice barely registered. We need to go. Now. The thing twitched. The whispering returned, rising to a deafening pitch. I didn't think. I just ran. We barreled out of the cabin into the freezing storm. The wind howled, but it wasn't enough to drown out the whispering that followed us. We didn't stop. We couldn't stop, because whatever that thing was, it wasn't the only one. The trees were full of them, black-eyed, hollow, and waiting. We ran. The storm swallowed us, turning the world into a swirling, frozen nightmare. The wind howled, tearing at our clothes, but it wasn't loud enough to drown out the whispering. It was everywhere now, all around us, not just one voice. Many. I risked a glance over my shoulder and immediately wished I hadn't. They were moving through the trees. Tall, emaciated figures with hollow, black eyes. Their limbs bent the wrong way as they stalked us, their movements unnatural, jerky, like puppets on invisible strings, and their mouths, they were smiling, grinning too wide and whispering. Join us. Stay. No more pain. Faster, Reynolds barked, shoving me forward. My legs burned, my lungs ached, but stopping meant death, or something worse. Then Sam tripped. I heard his strangled yell as he went down, disappearing into the snow. Sam! I skidded to a stop, reaching for him. A hand shot out of the ground. Not his. Theirs. It grabbed his ankle, yanking him back. He screamed. I lunged, grabbing his arms, pulling with everything I had. The thing in the snow was grinning. Lena fired. The shot rang out, tearing into its pale, stretched skin. It didn't bleed. It didn't even flinch. But it let go. I dragged Sam up and we ran. The whispering turned angry. We broke into a clearing, barely staying on our feet. The trees here were different, twisted, gnarled, blackened like they had been burned. But there was no fire, no heat, only cold. And something else, a massive gaping hole in the ground. A sinkhole? A cave? I didn't know. But the moment I saw it, my stomach turned, because the whispering was coming from inside it. And then I realized the things weren't chasing us anymore. They were waiting, watching. A sea of hollow eyes just beyond the tree line. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. They weren't trying to kill us. They were trying to bring us here, to this place, to the hole. Sam's breath hitched. What the hell is this? Reynolds didn't answer. He just stared, face pale, sweat freezing to his skin. Lena swallowed. Guys, I think we found where Michael went. The snow around the hole was disturbed. Footprints, drag marks, a struggle. Michael had been taken here, but where was he now? I stepped forward, shining my flashlight down into the hole. The light barely penetrated the darkness. The ground sloped down in jagged ledges, disappearing into an abyss. And then in the distance, I saw him, Michael Avery, standing at the bottom of the pit, his back to us. "Michael," I called. My voice echoed. He didn't move, didn't react, just stood there. Sam shook his head. No, man, we are not going down there." But I was already moving. I don't know what compelled me. Maybe it was the way he stood so unnaturally still. Maybe it was the fear that if I didn't go down there, I'd never stop seeing his face in my nightmares. Maybe it was the whispering, pulling at my mind, dragging me forward. Either way, I climbed down. The others followed, weapons raised. The deeper we went, the colder it got. And the whispering, it changed. It wasn't just nonsense anymore. It was speaking to us. "You are lost. You don't belong here. You will never leave." I gritted my teeth, pushing forward. We reached the bottom. Michael still hadn't moved. I stepped closer, had heart pounding. Michael, slowly, too slowly. He turned, and I wished he hadn't. His eyes were gone, just black pits, empty and endless. His skin was pale, stretched thin. His mouth moved, but no words came out, only whispering. And then he smiled. Not at me. Behind me. I turned and saw them, dozens of them, crawling from the darkness, waiting, reaching, whispering. And then the ground beneath us gave way, and we fell. Beneath the surface, the fall endless. The darkness swallowed us whole, the air rushing past like a silent scream. My body twisted, weightless, spinning through the abyss. Then, impact. I hit something hard, pain exploding through my ribs. The wind was knocked from my lungs, leaving me gasping, disoriented. The world spun, my vision swimming in black and red. Somewhere nearby, I heard the others groaning. I tried to move. My limbs felt sluggish, heavy, like something unseen was pressing down on me, and then I noticed it. The whispering was inside my head now, not just around me, inside me. Burrowing deep. "You are home now. You belong here." I forced myself up, wincing. A dim, sickly glow illuminated the cavern around us. The walls were slick, pulsing, almost breathing. Veins of black, oily substance slithered across the stone, shifting like something alive, and scattered across the ground, bones. Human. Hundreds of them. Some old, brittle, long abandoned. Others, fresh. Lena swore under her breath, pulling Sam to his feet. "Where the hell are we?" Reynolds staggered up beside me, gripping his rifle. His face was pale, eyes wide. "We need to move," he muttered. "Find a way out." But there was only one way forward, a tunnel, yawning open like a hungry mouth, and deep inside it, standing perfectly still, Michael Avery, waiting. I don't know why we didn't run. Maybe because there was nowhere to go. Maybe because the whispering held us, tugging at our thoughts, numbing our fear. Or maybe because we wanted to see. We walked forward, slow, cautious. Michael didn't move. His skin looked thinner now, almost translucent. His fingers twitched, curling and uncurling in slow, deliberate movements. I swallowed hard. "Michael?" His head snapped toward me, too fast, too sharp. His lips moved, but the voice that came out wasn't his. Not one voice. Thousands. Layered on top of each other, a chorus of agony, hunger, and something else. Something ancient. "We were here before you. We were here before all of you." Lena's breath hitched. "What are you?" Michael's mouth stretched into a grin, lips splitting, bloodless. "We are what comes after." Then the whispering roared. The walls moved. From the shadows they emerged, crawling, slithering, shifting between forms, hollow eyes, twisting limbs, grinning, grinning, grinning. There were so many of them. And we were trapped. Sam fired first. The muzzle flash lit up the cavern, momentarily revealing the nightmare in full. Dozens of them. Hundreds. The bullets tore through them, but they didn't die. They just kept coming. Reynolds grabbed my arm. "Run!" We turned, sprinting back the way we came, but the tunnel had changed. It wasn't a tunnel anymore. It was a throat, and it was closing. The ground shifted beneath us, pulling us deeper. The whispering turned into a scream. Not a sound, not something you could hear with your ears, something you could feel. A pressure behind the eyes, under the skin, inside the bones. I stumbled, legs giving out. Sam grabbed me, yanking me forward. Lena was ahead, clawing through the shifting walls, her face streaked with dirt and panic. Reynolds was right behind us until something grabbed him. He screamed. We turned, saw hands, so many hands, pulling him back, dragging him into the dark. His eyes met mine for half a second. Then he was gone. The whispering. We kept running. The tunnel tightened, squeezing around us. My lungs burned, my vision blurred. The whispering was breaking me apart, piece by piece. Then, a light, dim, faint, but Real. We burst through the tunnel, spilling out onto the snow. Cold air hit my face like a slap. The sky was still dark, the storm raging on. We didn't stop. We couldn't stop. We ran and ran until the whispering faded, until the trees no longer had eyes, until the only sound left was our own ragged breathing. We never found Reynolds. We never went back. By the time we reached base camp, the storm had wiped away our tracks, along with any proof of what we had seen. No one believed us. Michael Avery's body was recovered weeks later, frozen, hollow-eyed, smiling, just like the others, and at night, when the wind howls through the trees, I can still hear the whispering, waiting, calling.